Good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure to be back here once again. I had the good fortune to meet many of you last week when we were here as East Shore visiting for our shared worship service together, and I'm delighted to be invited back to be a guest in your pulpit here this morning in this lovely pavilion. This weather is perfect for the message this morning, so I hope it's something that you also can enjoy to some degree. I invite you into worship this morning, or a call to worship with the words of Reverend Annie Forster. Come we now out of the darkness of our unknowing and the dusk of our dreaming. Come we now from far places. Come we now into the twilight of our awakening and the reflection of our gathering. Come we now all together. We bring unilluminated our dark caves of doubting. We seek unbedazzled the clear light of understanding. May the sparks of our joining kindle our resolve, brighten our spirits, reflect our love, and unshadow our days. Come we now, enter the dawning. So I do have a story this morning as a time for all ages. I don't know how many ages we have represented here today, but it's a great story for everyone. It's actually a story about a tree that I met here in this city. It's in a park not too far from here, over on Cedar Road. This is the legend of the fire tree. There was a seed in the ground at the top of a steep hill. It had all of the water and nourishment it needed, and it grew into a sapling amongst the others all around it. While some trees fell to the wind, the sapling was one with the forest and continued to grow. There was a sapling in the forest at the top of the steep hill. It was protected from the harsher elements by the large trees all around it, and it grew into a small tree. Some trees did not have what they needed, but this small tree was one with the forest and continued to grow. There was a small tree at the top of the steep hill. The ground near the tree was struck by lightning, and as the searing plasma returned to the sky, it set the tree on fire. The base of the tree burned as the rain continued to fall. Now, before the rain could douse the flames, the base of the tree was reduced to ash. The small tree stood above its scars, dug its roots deep down below the pain, and still one with the forest, it continued to grow. There was a large tree at the top of a steep hill. It was hundreds of feet tall and many, many years old. The base of the tree was hollow and charred from a fire so many years ago. Some trees fell away, but the large tree was one with the forest and continued to grow. There were a group of small children walking to the top of a steep hill. They met the large tree and learned it had also experienced pain when it was very young. It taught them that no matter how big, no matter how strong, no matter how scary, and no matter how long, if they did not face it alone, then not everything was lost in the fire. And the children were one with the forest, and they continued to grow.
So our ancient reading today is Tao Te Ching 71 by Lao Tzu, translated by Charles Miller. There is nothing better than to know that you don't know, not knowing, yet thinking you know. This is sickness. Only when you are sick of being sick can you be cured. The sage's not being sick is because she is sick of sickness. Therefore, she is not sick. And then our modern reading is an excerpt from The Universal Sense by Seth Howlowitz, sorry. There is no such thing as silence. We are constantly immersed in and affected by sound and vibration. This is true no matter where you go, from the deepest underwater trenches to the highest, almost airless peaks of the Himalayas. In truly quiet areas, you can even hear the sound of air molecules vibrating inside your ear canals or the noise of the fluid in your ears themselves. The world we live in is full of energy acting on matter. It's as basic as life itself. And the reasons the constant thrumming doesn't drive us all insane are the same reasons that we get distracted by radio jingles and can't read when the TV is on. We're good at choosing what we hear. But even if we don't hear a sound, someone else does. Sound is everywhere. From the night chorus of frogs in the deepest rainforest to the emptiest wind-blown stretch of the Antarctic, you are surrounded by, embedded in, and molded by sound and vibration. Everywhere, anywhere there is energy, including the depths of intergalactic space, is a vibratory region. Some are richer than others, but none are totally silent. The range of measured vibration is immense. At the top of the spectrum is the insanely fast, that is 9,192,631,770 cycles per second of an energized cesium. Why did you do that to me? And 133 atoms, near, if not at the bottom of the gravity wave, induced pulses of sound of black holes. A B flat 57 octaves below the middle C, according to Andrew Fabian of the Institute of Astronomy in Cambridge.
Next up is our social justice moment, which we have, and I'm going to pronounce her name correctly, Selena Awesome Vicario.
Yeah.
And she is going to talk to us about ethno-foraging. So I will invite Selena up now.
So I'm Selena Awesome Vicario, and I use either she or they. If you can't pronounce my name that way, the English way is Selena Awesome Vicario. Yeah. So I'm here to talk to you about ethnobotanical foraging. So who here has heard of ethnobotany? Yes! Which never happened either. It's amazing. And then who here has heard about foraging? Awesome. Who here has foraged before? Awesome. So what ethnobotany is we're merging together what our understanding of from Western sciences like botany and plant sciences with our understanding of ancient traditions, traditional medicine, folklore, and people who have association with these plants throughout history. Indigenous groups, cultural significance, all of this goes into our deeper understanding and appreciation of these plants and of our role in our ecosystem. I brought another tablecloth because I have actual dirt. So me too. I don't want to dirty up the space. Okay, and so when we talk about foraging, there are some little ground rules, and I have made. Do they have them? I will. Oh, well, you will have them. I only have very tiny print ones right now with me, but that's okay. So we have 4 main rules to foraging. And I wrote a really cringe little song for it, but I won't make you, everyone told me to stop with that. So afterward, if you want me to, I'll do it for you. But I had like a drum and a collar. It was, yeah, no, they didn't like it. No age group, none of them. So yeah, but so I made this like little cheat sheet, and we're gonna go into like what this means as we talk about ethnobotany and foraging. So we all know that we're part of the earth, right? Like we are here, everything we do and have and exist because of the earth that is providing for us, right? And a lot of indigenous cultures and currently, there are some religious groups as well, but a lot of indigenous cultures really hone in on this understanding and this appreciation that we're part of the earth, and not just that we are in control of it, or we are, able to take rather than not to give back. The concept of reciprocity is something that comes up a lot in ethnobotanical foraging and with a lot of cultures around the world. And so when we talk about reciprocity, that's what is involved with that. So think about, if you give and receive, if you are thankful and also you are providing, these kinds of things these relationships that we have with people, we also have with the earth. And so when we look at how we are relating to the earth, and we look at how we are fitting into our ecosystem, we look at, okay, what are we bringing back? And then what are we also taking? So this concept of reciprocity. And so we're going to really think about that a lot as we go through these rules here of foraging. Sorry, I have thoughts. So rule 1 is know your stuff. So 100%, are you sure you know that you can touch that plant? Are you sure you know what it is? And how do we know? How do you know what a plant is? Has anyone ever seen this plant before? Maybe, okay. Okay, I heard it looks like mint. Well, why do you think that? That's an excellent reason. You are familiar with it. You have built this relationship. You have an association with it in your community, in your life. So you know what this plant is. Maybe you don't know which mint this is, but maybe you have this association. You need self-doubt. That's one of our senses, We talk about using our 5 senses all the time. We have more than 20 senses as humans. So we don't really talk about in school because you can't make cute little icons for all the other ones, But when it comes to our senses of, sight, what can we see about the plant that makes you familiar with it? And you can put it on the table, or folks you're welcome to touch any of these plants. I didn't give that introduction. I brought plants for you to touch. You can touch them, you can taste them, you can smell them. So yeah, that is mint. Yes, that is apple mint, which is called Mentha suaveolens is the Latin name for it. But we're 100% sure what that is, so you can taste that one. Unless you don't trust me, and I totally agree. Don't trust me. Do your own research, right? So yeah, you can look at that and see. Well, we've got a square stem. We're looking to see what can we see, the colors, and all these different botanical features. And when we learn in botany and plant sciences, like in school, they teach you how all the terms for those things and all of the different variations that we might come in contact with. And those are really important things to know. But what happens if we start losing our sight? What happens if we don't have sight? What happens if we were never sighted? How else can we identify plants? Just like you said, our association, you have a relationship. You don't like that one. You're like, I tolerate you. I have, you have association. You put me next to a morning glory, I'm upset. I hate that plant. You put me next to a tree of heaven in North America, I'm gonna rip it right out of the ground. It's #1 most invasive, next to garlic mustard. So we have these relationships that we build, and then, well, what you see, then what do you hear? So these plants aren't necessarily in the wild, but if it touches your hand and it's sound, if you hear rustling of leaves, do the pine needles sound the same as the maple leaves? What is the difference? I'm hearing a lot of owls. But a lot of owls, it's kind of foresty, oak trees here. Oh, there's probably poison ivy then. Because owls eat what's in the poison ivy. And so when we start to know the earth and start to know our community, we include things like the creatures and plants and everything that's growing in that space is part of our community, and it's part of what's helping us to thrive. So instead of thinking about plants as just decorative and an accent and a thing in the background, starting to get to know them, building these relationships with the plants that maybe you're annoyed by them, maybe you love them, and that's personal to the individual, and I can't teach that to you. That's something that through your experience you'll start to develop. And then also, you know, what are we hearing when we're hearing the plant? Does the plant make a sound in the wind? Does the plant make a sound when it touches you? What else do I hear in that environment that can give me a clue? What else is in that environment? Is it wet? Is it really wet and that looks kind of like Queen Anne's Lake? No, that's probably poison water hemlock. Queen Anne's Lake doesn't like wet. They don't do well there. So it's just getting to know these things about, you know your neighbor, you know your friend. Oh, they hate onions. Oh, they would never wear socks with sandals. Or they get to know these preferences of their neighbors is such a beautiful thing. We can really extend that further than just food. We can really extend our understanding. So knowing that plant, if you taste it, you know, like for sure we know it's a mint and we taste it. Does this mint taste different from spearmint? Sure does. Does this mint have kind of a fuzzy texture? Does this mint have a smooth texture? What is the thing that I can feel about this plant? That's another sense that we can use. And then also, what does it smell like? Is there a smell that's in the wind? Some of you I noticed when you touch it and you smell your fingers. That's a really great way to start identifying plants. That's really wonderful now that you know it's safe to touch. So yeah, number one, know the plant. You have to be 100% sure. It's the number one rule. If you forget the rest, that one, please, don't die.
No into the wild.
Exactly. Number two, forage with gratitude. And that's a lot of what I'm here to talk about. Foraging with gratitude is this concept of consent. Asking permission. Can I take this? So when I harvest my little, I go on meadows and all kind of peppers, and all kind of plants. And when I harvest, you know, it looks right, and I go, can I have this? And if it comes off easily in my hand, I say thank you. You can use a lot of words for thanks. You can use a lot of words. There's a lot of feelings that we have that come up in our bodies when we experience thanks and gratitude. And all of that is valid. You don't necessarily have to vocalize. Communication can happen outside of this work. That's totally valid if you're not talking out loud to plants. People may look at you weird. They're really weird all the time, and it's fine. But you know, I'm dealing with reciprocity. For me, using words may be comfortable at the time, and maybe not. But asking consent, like, can I take from the plant? And you know, plants produce a stress response when they are trying to avoid predators. So if you've got green vegetables, anyone here eats green vegetables, you know, you soak in the salt water that helps remove that stress response. It ends the life cycle of the plant. And then that way, you're getting sweeter, more nice tasting vegetable rather than the bitter stress response that happens in that plant. So if you have bitter greens, well, how were they harvested? And did you soak them in salt water to end that life cycle? I hate to break it to you, but the plants in vegetables in your fridge now are still alive. You look at them under a microscope, you'll see little tiny smileys or frowns all around. And it's fantastic. So just, you know, knowing that. It's like, yeah, you'd be pretty bitter if somebody's trying to eat you while you're alive. I imagine. So, you know, think about this. You know, put yourself in a perspective. So, foraging with gratitude. So that aspect of consent, that aspect of, you know, I'm appreciating all of that. But also, never taking the first point that you see. So if we're in an area, we want to make sure that that plant is going to thrive with certainty, unless it's that tree of heaven or the garlic mustard, which we talked about, we're pulling out because it's number one and number two most invasive and nothing like that. But we don't want to take that first plant we see. You want to make sure that it's going to have the ability to procreate and flourish and thrive in that area. You want to wait till you see at least the third plant of that same kind in that little area. So don't take the first plant you see, wait until you see plant number 3. And only take just what you need. What's enough to feed yourself and your family. And we want to make sure that you're not taking more than 10% of a plant in an area. Now, with most of the plants that I brought with us, all of the plants that I brought with us today actually are invasive. So if you were to pull up all of these, it's going to be just fine. But if we put like our viola auroria, our wild violets, which are native and beautiful here, we want to make sure that they're going to have opportunity to thrive, that the creatures that are depending on that food source have access to it, that it can still create, etc. We want to only take what we need and what you're sure you're going to use. And it's illegal to forage for commercial use. So foraging is only legal for personal consumption. So if you're restaurants going out and harvesting wild ramps in the metro parks and selling them, that is a felony. Please stop. Anyway, so yeah, so taking just what you're gonna use. And so again, making sure that, do I need this? Do I really want this? Do I have a reason for this? Am I just picking this flower because it's pretty? You know, thinking about that. And then also, what are you leaving in return? So in many cultures, it's customary to leave a gift, some kind of treat. And now that's not like leaving your soda can or something. That's leaving something that you know is going to be okay for that environment and that is something of yours that you have to share. And so if anybody wants to practice on any of these plants I've brought today, I brought some dry lavender. And you know, lavender is okay in this environment. If you leave it, cockroaches and cricket people don't like it. Neither do many spiders, and ants absolutely hate it. So again, you're not harming by taking it out. So I have that. I have some sweetgrass, tobacco, other plant matter that is going to be something that is harvested, cultivated, otherwise precious to the person. Is something we did. Now let's say you're hiking, right? And we're like, I got a really bad cut and I absolutely need an emergency something right now. I got a bee sting. I have to do something about this skin situation right now. And we see our friends here. You see narrowleaf planting, Plantago lanceolata. We see broadleaf planting, Plantago major. These are the seeds in various stages of drying. All of this is edible and medicinal. We're going to use these leaves and we're going to crush them up and put them on my room right now. I don't have necessarily a gift. I was just planning to forage, just as an emergency. But I offer that gratitude. And maybe later on I go back and I give back. Maybe later on I do something to make sure that that environment is thriving. I pick up all the trash that's in the area. I do something to share that reciprocity. It doesn't have to be material. We can pass this one around. You're welcome to touch them. The skinny one here, the lanceolata, we often, as kids, would use it like a band-aid because we don't want to go inside or get in trouble or get hurt. And then the big one is the bigger the leaves are more bitter. Again, they're going to be more medicinal. Smaller the leaves, more tender, better for your pesto. So rule number 3, don't forage by the street, nor on the highway. It's not safe to eat. Plants near industry are not a treat. Forage far away from the street. So you want to be at least 10 feet from a side road and at least 100 feet from the main road or a highway. And if you're seeing like edible seeds that are growing along the highway, leave them there, appreciate them, identify them, tell your friends I found that. Awesome. But leave it there. You don't want to eat that. So it's gonna, everything that is in your soil is into those plants. So when we talk about too, like people who are doing pest control, they don't like weeds, they don't like the dandelions, they don't like this plantago. Okay, well what's in this plantago? We've got iron, we've got calcium, we've got magnesium. So probably it took all of that from your soil. You're gonna have to replace that nutrient balance if you want to get rid of it. Again, thinking about what are the preferences? What is our placement? Instead of using a harsh chemical that's going to go in our soil, we are just thinking about how it grows and mitigating that. But I digress, sorry. Rule number 4 now is making sure you have consent. So we talked about consent from the plant, but consent from the landowner or management. It is unlawful and uncool to forage or steal from parks in your neighborhood or your neighbor's yard or business there. Anti-foraging laws were implemented as a form of food apartheid. It was a way to restrict food access and resource access and food sovereignty to people who were indigenous to the Americas, as well as people who were newly freed from chattel slavery. So the Indian Removal Act of 1830 and the General Allotment Act of 1887 furthered the inaccessibility of historically foraged land. So, and it perpetuated a culture that saw the land as private property rather than a communal resource and something that we are all part of, that we all put into and we all take from. So that is something that's really important to know of why you can't forage in these places. Technically, you are legally allowed to forage on public land. What does that mean? It means national forests only. And so national forests are not really that near here, but one thing you can do if you wanted to practice foraging, asking somebody who has a farm or an urban farm, can I do plants? Can I forage? Is it a working farm? It's probably not going to be pesticides there. You're probably going to be okay if it's an organic farm. Oh, I can find my in the wrong spot, sorry. And then okay, thank you. But yeah, so to summarize, foraging is supposed to be a public good. It's supposed to be something that we are all able to do with gratitude, awareness, and our needs in mind. And you don't want to take just any plants you find. You want to know your stuff and take what you need and don't be consumed with corporate greed. So those are the rules of the foraging. And I have some little plant ID bingo cards for during the coffee social if you wanted to practice IDing these plants. And I did mention also that when we pull up those invasive species, we want to pull them all because does anyone know what this is? Everyone looks so serious.
So concerned.
This is actually called Morris alba. This is the white mulberry, and it's invasive here. The red mulberries are native. The white mulberries are popping up everywhere. This is what it looks like when it grew from the dead. So yeah, literally, this was trash and that sprouted. This is why we throw it in the actual trash in the compost when we're removing an invasive species. This is wonderfully edible and medicinal. And you're welcome to touch it and get familiar with it. You can eat the leaves. You can, well, I wouldn't eat the leaves, but you can. You make tea from the leaves. But yeah, so that's our example of that. But I have also during the coffee hour, we'll have, or coffee session, I have hot tea that is from this very mint that we have here. I was going to demonstrate how to pour it, but we don't have time to do that now. But I have some of the dried mint for you to try. You can take some with you if you want, or you can have a little sample of it. Yeah. And then, yeah, these are some of the plants that you're going to commonly see. You have all of them here, and they're on the cards. Thank you so much, and I appreciate your time.
Our modern reading this morning. It addressed the physical reality of silence. And if you are someone who becomes very easily overwhelmed by sensory experiences, then I imagine you agreed with Dr. Horowitz when he stated that there is no such thing as silence. And just because you can't hear something, someone does. That claim that there's no such thing as silence has been made one other time that I'm aware of. On August 29th, 1952, pianist David Tudor stepped onto stage at Maverick Concert Hall to perform a new composition. He sat down at the piano and set a stopwatch and closed the piano lid. And the audience sat in confused silence for 33 seconds before he paused the stopwatch, opened the piano lid. This was the end of the first movement. He restarted his stopwatch and closed the piano lid once again, and for the next 2 minutes and 40 seconds, he once again sat in silence, occasionally turning the pages of his score, a score which, despite being only 70 years old, has been lost to history. At the end of that nearly 3 minutes of silence, he finally once again paused his stopwatch, reopened the piano lid, marking the end of the second movement. He started the stopwatch one last time, closed the lid, and sat silently for another 1 minute and 20 seconds. And then, at the end of the third movement, he opened the piano lid, stopped his stopwatch, and took a bow at exactly 4 minutes and 33 seconds. And that, my friends, is still considered one of the most controversial pieces of music in history. We're told that there was a polite applause when David Tudor bowed and walked off the stage, but that's likely because most of the audience had walked out during the third movement. Composer John Cage addressed this when he made that claim I mentioned earlier. He said, "They missed the point. There's no such thing as silence. What they thought was silence, because they didn't know how to listen, was full of accidental sounds. You could hear the wind stirring outside during the first movement. During the second, raindrops began pattering the roof. During the third, the people themselves made all kinds of interesting noises as they talked or walked out. To this day, people argue about what this composition really means. It was a hoax, a joke. It was avant-garde, Dadaist, theater, a million other things. And to most of these, the answer that John Cage gave was the very unsatisfying, maybe. Can't rule it out. Around the time that he composed 4 minutes and 33 seconds, John Cage had taken an interest in Zen Buddhism. Zen being the Japanese word for the concept, in Chinese called Chan Buddhism. Legend says that the same teacher, a man from India named Bodhidharma, traveled across Asia and established all of the Buddhist temples in the region, including the Shaolin Temple, more commonly known here in the West for Kung Fu fighting than its spirituality, wisdom, or meditative practices. It is a common misconception with regards to meditation that the desire is to empty your mind. I had the opportunity to meditate in a Buddhist temple in Cleveland during my self-imposed spiritual journey, which eventually led me to Unitarian Universalism. And the abbot there addressed that assertion saying, "Don't empty your mind. If your mind is empty, you are dead." I've come to see this as very much the same claim that Dr. Horowitz and John Cage have made. Just as there is no such thing as physical silence, because something is always vibrating. And just as there is no such thing as artistic silence, because there is music in the accidental sounds, there's no such thing as spiritual silence. And just as the non-existence of physical silence makes our relationship with sound more complex and interesting, just as the non-existence of artistic silence makes our relationship with music more controversial and existential, the non-existence of spiritual silence makes it so much more desirable. Because if it is not the silence itself, then what are we seeking when we hold a moment of silence? When we sit in meditative silence? When we pray? When we listen? In every instance of intentional silence, what is it we're looking for? Is it peace, understanding, calm or chaos, discomfort, change, advice, questions, answers? Yes and no. Maybe. It depends. In fact, maybe silence is God. Many of my UU peers are just as certain about the non-existence of God as they are about silence. But whatever it is, we're seeking it. Seeking to become closer to it, or seeking it so that we know exactly where it is and we can avoid it. A lot of people think they know exactly what it is and assign their own meaning to it. In the right context, it is extremely controversial. And there's a lot of blame to go around for why that is. It's everywhere and nowhere all at once. I could go on, but I feel confident in this moment in asserting that silence might be God. And so the answer to the question of silence, whatever the question might be for you, whatever that question might be, the answer is, I don't know. Isn't that exciting? Because as we heard from our ancient reading, there's nothing better than to know that you don't know. And knowing, thinking you know when you do not know, that's sickness. We heard it with the plants. If I think I know what it is and I touch it, good luck. I have literal sickness. But we're uncomfortable with not knowing, right? So we think we know. We assert that we know, and we cause damage with our sickness. By preaching hate from the pulpit or trying to set churches on fire. You know about that one. By passing harmful and hateful ideas into law, attempting to assassinate the former president. Every time we think we know everything we need to know to judge someone, to judge them fully. That's that sickness. And I don't know about you, but I'm sick of that sickness. It can happen even when we go into something with the best of intentions. Have any of you ever done a land acknowledgement? Have any of you ever spoken to an Indigenous person about a land acknowledgement? As a white man, I exist within a group of people who believe we know. We've got land acknowledgements figured out. And we're proud of ourselves for it. Every time we do it. That's amazing. We think we know. And while I cannot speak for every Indigenous person, the conversations I have had around land acknowledgements have given me the sense that I do not know.
Yeah.
And with that acknowledgement that I do not know, I gain something important. An opportunity to listen. And through my listening, I learned. I learned from a good friend a practice of showing gratitude. Every time she goes to a new place, she told me, she takes time to introduce herself to the land. Time to be one of those people who speaks to plants. She takes time to introduce herself to the land and the multitudes it contains, and she offers gratitude for the opportunity to be there, to make use of and gain from the land, to be present. Gratitude for the plants, the animals, the water, the sustainers and the sustained. She offers gratitude to the ancestors who were sustained by and protected the land, and their descendants, who despite our best land acknowledgements are still here. Still here, still sustained, still protectors. I still don't know what the answer is to any question about God or silence. And I think that makes me one of their greatest disciples. Because Dr. Horowitz tells us that there are many sounds that we physically cannot hear. And John Cage says we're going to miss sounds that we can hear in pursuit of what we believe about silence. Buddhism teaches us to sit in the silence, and Taoism teaches us the importance of not knowing. And if we do it right, our friends teach us about gratitude. There are so many ways to seek answers and just as many ways to miss them. But when I sit in the silence and I understand that I don't know, with gratitude in my heart, I don't know. That is when I'm finally open to receiving an answer. Because I don't know what is there in the silence, but I know it's not empty. And with gratitude for that opportunity, I will sit and listen. I invite you to go forth into the comfort of unknowing silence. I'm deeply grateful to have been invited here, and I express that gratitude that my friend taught me, not only to the trees and birds and the wind and the water, but to all of you as well. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful time enjoying the rest of the season.